Hey everybody, it's Maureen, and I wanted to share what I've been kind of doing over the past couple weekends and doing just a mild bit of vintage sewing haul, I guess you could say. And so what we really have here is kind of a collection of 2 weekends worth of taking an hour, wearing a mask, being very, very cautious, washing one's hands, and at least gathering a little bit of supplies. And the basket, sort of, that basket there, that's my regular items available. So I'm gonna kind of jump in frame here, or you'll see my nifty hands, so to speak. This was today's collection of items. Sans those. Don't think you need to see the receipts, although I spent less than $40 for everything. Mainly when I do well, I guess you could say this is a vintage sewing thrift haul. I mainly go for trim. So we have little bits of this very nice little dot lace in a nice chocolate brown color, and I found several yards of it. I have a source for the exact same stuff in like a 10-yard length, but I have several yards here already. These are 2 3-yard packages. This has 5 yards in it. So I mean, I have 11 yards already. That's probably plenty for doll trim at this point. And that's mainly what a lot of my trims are for making dolls and things of this nature. And we do have Jace and Star off camera. They may walk through the frame, so. This is Mr. Jace right here, because he just wants to be curious. It smells. This happens to be some wonderful velvet ribbon that this is probably anywhere between 1/4 and 1/8 of an inch. And that's pretty nice. I was hoping to do a red dress of some form again for one of the dolls very soon. Oh yes, we must sniff. It smells like somewhere else. So we have that. And I found a few more really awesome embroidery hoops. What I like about these is they don't have the little tensioner at the top for the embroidery hoops. They're also really small. And the way that you do the tension is you take some twill tape, or you take some other kind of binding tape, wrap it around the inner circle, and it'll create enough friction to be able to hold them and the piece of fabric together. So whenever I find them and they don't have any kind of tensioner to them, like what you normally would find at Joann's, then I grab these. Yes, I know. It smells. Everything smells new. This isn't necessarily a thrift haul piece, but I wanted to show these to you. This happens to be some lace that I'm going to be using on a black dress, possibly in the future, and some padding. Keep in mind that your little shoulder pads or other padding in your dresses, if you're not using it or take apart the dress, what you can do with those is use it for padding with doll costumes and other items like that. So it can come in handy and be used again. So I ran into a couple of really great pin cushions. These have a velvety-like texture to them. This one has a bunch of little strawberries in it in a metal-like basket. And then I ran into this other wonderful one that's also velvety-like. I don't run into them very often, so when I find them, I grab them because they're just darn cute. And they make great home decor too. And I found this little pin cushion. I have a larger version that has a velvet cover. This has just a plain cotton one. But what's nice is it's a container and you actually have something inside. which I'm going to check that out right now. So came with a couple pins. Oh, look at that. There's thread on the inside. These little cardboard pieces. That's kind of handy. And it's an aluminum kind of outside. It's got a little bit of dents and digs from use, but that's kind of part of the charm of vintage items. This item only cost me $2. A lot of the items that you're seeing here were only a couple dollars a piece because they're bought used, and these are sold in some antique stores. I bought myself a couple thimbles recently. This one happens to be a size 10 thimble, has a nice decorative little edge to it. And then, whoops, fits pretty well for size 10. I noticed that this one would probably work great on a day where your hands are a little bit swollen. And then I have this one, and these were $1 a piece. It's a size 8, and that fits really nicely too. So even though they're different sizes, they fit pretty well. Hi, Jace. He's gonna try to burrow underneath here. So we have a couple thimbles, and I found this wonderful old advertisement. So 70 golden eye needles with a threader. Yet again, only $3, and there's a couple Singer needles in here. I really enjoy the gold eyed needles. My grandmother had a whole bunch of them in her vintage sewing kit that I was given after she had passed away. And I can see why she loved them, because they really are very smooth and very easy to work with. So I'm more of a fan of the golden eye needles, but there's a whole bunch of nice little hand sewing needles in here, so I couldn't resist, not for $3 anyway. And I ran across this, and it made me think of very much like the tailor clapper that's in here. This happens to probably be some sort of darning device that you would put in your socks so you could darn. Well, in my current Dastardly doll project, I have to make shoes. And I said, oh, that's kind of foot shaped, albeit very small feet. What are you doing? What are you doing? That's not yours. No. Okay. And so with this, I figured I could use it as a base to be able to make the doll shoes. Mom's gonna have to keep taking things away from you, or are you just gonna lay in frame? Yes, I think you are. So, even though this is probably meant more as a darning device to go inside socks, which we can certainly use it for that, and only $5. I'm not gonna complain. It's a nice piece of, looks like that's maple to me. Solid wood. And the last item I found, this was $8, is a tailor's clapper with the old advertisement in there too. So I'm really excited about that, because these tend to go for a lot more than for $8 online. And I bought the basket for $5, which is a nice willow basket. It's very strong and sturdy. I don't really necessarily need the basket per se, but it's handy that since a lot of stores aren't having their baskets available for people to use, if I find a good sturdy one that I can purchase, I just purchase another basket, because in the vintage and Renaissance community, you can really never have too many baskets when you're out at an event, and you can use them to hide just about anything that's sort of modern. So one way or the other, the basket's gonna get used. So that's what I have from this particular list of things. So a lot of wonderful little sewing notions. And I found some fabric last week. This happens to be a wonderful selection of silks. Now, some of it does have holes, but what I figured that I could use this for is lining material on doll clothes, because it's nice, thin and light. if I also ran across a piece of vintage clothing that needed a patch on the lining, these pieces would work great for that too. Yes, you're handsome and everybody loves you, Jace. Say hi. Say hello to everybody. Continuing on, I found this wonderful silk scarf that has blue and green. This is what we call woven in contrasting colors. The warp is done in green, the weft is done in blue, and what it does is creates this wonderful effect that you hear called shot silk. So I could certainly wear this as a scarf. I could make it into doll clothing, which there's a possible strong bit that I may do that. I mean, the color on it is just amazing. So it's a hand woven 100% silk, right on the tag. You can't beat that. And this was only $5. So that's a total win right there. I love scarves for making doll clothing. I've done that with some of my Santos dolls. If you check out the video for my Santos dolls, there is sort of a cream color and gold dress on one of them. That one's made from a pashmina silk scarf like this. But not to be outdone, I found some wool. Now this is a very bright green. We do have some staining here that I'm gonna have to figure out if I'll be able to clean that or not. Wool is a little tricky on that, but this piece was, it's pretty amazing. It's a decent size piece that I could probably make a set of sleeves out of this. Maybe more than one, and then possibly avoid the staining because it's just on this one corner there, but which would put it in the middle of the fabric. Oh, there's some more. Well, you could easily cut around it if need be to make that set of sleeves. It's the only problem when you're buying vintage or used fabrics. You do have to be careful if there is a bit of staining. But this was such a wonderful bit of wool. I'm gonna see if I can find a stain guide online. Maybe I can figure out how to get rid of those stains possibly. But such a wonderful piece, I really couldn't pass it up because it's very unusual to find wool in just yardage, especially around here. Joann's used to sell wool fabrics in the winter, but it seems to be very rare that I come across them. So many of them are a polyester blend or something else of that nature. And this is just an amazing shade of green. It seemed that I didn't want to leave it behind. Sometimes you just find something and it feels great. What can I tell you? I love a good wool. And on that same vein, I found this, which seems to be a blend. It's either a cotton, I think there's at least a little bit of poly in there. And this definitely has a wool texture. That's 100% wool for sure, I can tell. This one's definitely a blend, but still really usable. We have a twill weave here on this side and more of a straight grain on the back. So it's kind of an interesting bit. Of course, with it being black, you show less staining anyway. It definitely has that feel to it. And that twill is just lovely. There's at least a few, probably at least 2 yards here. What's kind of nice is we have some threads here on the cut edge that I might be able to burn test and figure out how much of this is wool and how much of it is a possible synthetic. but only a few dollars for this piece yet again, so very affordable. Could definitely make it into a set of sleeves. And I just recently purchased the stamping set and the slashing set from the Tudor Tailor shop. So the wools are perfect for this because they don't really fray too bad. And making out a set of sleeves and trying those effects will be a lot of fun. And this is a great opportunity to do that. The silks do fray if you decide to do any kind of slashing on them. Now this is my normal basket that I use for sewing. I kind of keep a selection of just general things in here, and I figured I would share it with you because I shared my more fancier, somewhat historically accurate tools, but this is more my everyday thing. So I found a typical mason jar, and there's a magnet on the inside of this. And the magnet is sort of holding all of the pins together. The smaller diameter pins are all glass headed. The bigger ones are plastic, and there's a couple pearl ones in there too. But everything's together, and it's away from the cats and in a sealed container that they can't get into. These are something that I kind of didn't know if I shared on one of my last videos, but compression gloves are your friend. These I purchased a few years ago at Joann's. They have them still, but they're in a brown color. If your hands get tired or you know you're going to be doing a lot of hand sewing, these are wonderful to push the circulation to your fingertips. Because as you can see, the colors in my hands are just changing as you're seeing that the circulation is being pushed to the fingertips. This prevents them from feeling very numb or cold, and also keeps the little bits of muscle and tendon that are in your fingertips from tiring as quickly. They're not exactly the most fashionable things, but I have to say, they work. And I have mildly the very beginnings of arthritis in a few knuckles, so this for me helps me be able to sew longer. So sometimes you have to do what you have to do. Bear with me here while I take these off. Okay. Those there. And I have several of these bent wood boxes. These actually were bought at the same antique store where I get the notions. This is my embroidery on top. So I basically went ahead and just glued this down with hot glue. So we're not talking anything too overly historically accurate, but it's fun and it's a great way of taking a practice piece that wasn't going to be used for much and doing something a little different with it. In here, I have several different bits of needles, different sizes, textures. Now these are ones that I bought at Walmart. And if you take a good look at them, what's going on there is that those ends are very blunt. And what I've noticed with them is they're very uncomfortable to use. So I don't use these too often. And if I would bend and break one, I would just throw it out. But I'm not going to waste them. I will use them up just like I would anything else. And I have several pairs of Stork scissors. Some are sharper than others, but I really do enjoy them, not just for their shape, but most of the time they do keep their edge pretty well. And I have this is a awl, or several of them. I have actually 3 of them in here. They're all made of bone. And then this happens to be a bone bodkin. They come in really handy if you're using yarn or something else of that nature. Let's see, there's more of a tapestry needle in there. Put that back with its friends over here. Sometimes they do try to make a little escape. So having a foldable book is useful. Remember when I was talking about the gold-headed needles? Those are just the couple that are left on my grandmother's bit that she had in here. So I'm glad that I have more for in the future. And a bit of hooks and eyes because I use them more than anything else for closures. Since I do Renaissance clothing and most things pre-1930s, other than a few buttons, you certainly run into hooks and eyes a lot. You're back, you're back. And this is my most favorite thimble, which happens to be from Clover. No, this is not a sponsored video, but what I like is that it is able to be adjusted. And if I should have a long set of nails, which is very rare, but it does happen, and you're not going to chew, no, you're not going to chew the threads. Sorry, folks, discipline has to happen, especially if he's gonna try to eat the fabric. But as I was saying, one of my favorite thimbles is the Clover adjustable one. It has that wonderful texture to it, protects your hand, allows your nail to grow. So that's in here. And here's a few more of those wonderful hoops that I was telling you about. A few of them do sometimes have velvet on the inside to create that line of pressure too. And a lot of them don't. But I'm happy to have a few more of the round ones. I haven't run against any of the oblong ones yet, as far as additional ones. But great for a little bit of hand embroidery, something special, especially great for detail work. And one should always have a lump of beeswax. I keep mine in a little bit of a linen hanky. Here's a bit of that binding tape, which works great on the embroidery flosses or embroidery frames. And I have a few of these which could be used to wind thread on. Found them at the same antique shop. So besides having the beeswax, I also have a glass to really help illuminate some real fine work if I'm doing something in great detail. And another one of the, ooh, there's threads coming out of this one. Another bit of embroidery on top of a box. I have a whole bunch of black silk threads in this particular box. There's a few loose ones that I'm just gonna plop on the top there. Several thread winders in there too. And that's pretty much what's in my general sewing kit. And because the basket is a bit deep, and this is also a bent wood basket. So you have the bent features there. I find that they're really sturdy for the most part. And with the domed lid, you can't really go wrong. You could really pack this full if you wanted to. What do you think of that? It's a Jace. Well, at least this time we got a little bit of cat action in our video. It hasn't happened in a little while, so. This is Maureen and Jace signing off. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. And if you really enjoyed this video, stay tuned for others and consider subscribing. Really appreciate you watching. Have a great day. Bye.